Okay, cool. Welcome to the Real Talk Career Edition. Yeah, thank you so much for, just squeezing us in your busy schedule, so that we can have this opportunity to learn more about the field that you are currently in, and also to know you as a person and what is it that you do. But before we start going deep, do you mind just giving us a quick introduction of who you are?
Okay. Uh, well, thanks for having me. It's always fun talking about what you do because what I do, I feel sometimes when I tell people about it, it's shocking, like they've never heard of it before. So, my name is Sechaba Madiope. I'm from
Mhm.
Limpopo, deep rural in Bochum. If you know the place, is like after Polokwane there, like you're going to more like the side of Louis Richard, but not really. But that's where I'm
Mhm.
from. Born and raised there. Well, technically, I was born in Pretoria, but I was raised in Limpopo. That's where I pretty much did my primary and my high school. And then after high school, as you know, is tradition, is culture. After high school, you go to Gauteng. So that's
Yes.
what I did. I spent a year in Gauteng after high school, which was my gap year. That was
Okay.
2015. Yes. And
Oh.
then after 2015, I applied to study at Stellenbosch. And yes, I did Stellenbosch for 5 years. It was supposed to be four, but hey, it was so nice. I decided to stay 5 years, if you believe that. So, yeah, I did 5 years in Stellenbosch. And then from there, I went back to Pretoria after completing my undergrad.
Uh-huh.
Stayed there for like a year, about 9 months to a year. And then I got my first internship in KZN, which
Uh-huh.
I did for just a couple of months. I think it was 3 months. And then
Okay.
from there, that's how I started moving from company to company until where I am right now.
Yeah.
So I believe you'll obviously ask about that as time goes. So
Yes,
I won't
yes.
go into the details. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Yeah. And you are in the forestry field, right?
That's always a very complex question to answer. So my
Mm-hmm.
base degree was in forestry, right? Cool.
Okay.
I did a Bachelor of Science in Forestry and Wood Science.
That's
And
Stellenbosch.
then, yes, at Stellenbosch. And I did my master's at Stellenbosch as well in
Mm-hmm.
Forestry and Wood Science. And then after that, I sort of switched. I went into data analytics and industrial engineering. So I did a certificate with UCT in data analysis, and then from
Mm-hmm.
there, I registered for a postgrad in industrial engineering, which I'm supposed to be completing this year, but I decided to skip one year. I'll see it next year. There is such
Yeah.
a thing as too much studying, so I figured I should take a break. Also, I was starting a new job and all that, so I figured I don't want to do a lot in the same year.
Yeah. And just to tell you like a quick story, when I messaged Maseja, I first asked him that if he knows someone in agriculture,
Hmm.
and he said he's dead. And I was like, okay, cool. And then my follow-up question was, and do you know someone who's doing industrial engineering in that field? And that's where your name came up. And he was like, no, I know someone who can meet both those requirements. And that's when I asked for your contacts to, because you have your forestry degree and also industrial engineering. That's a great combination to think about it.
Yeah, it's how the course was designed in Stellenbosch. So how it happens is in your first, second, and up until third year, you pretty much
Mm.
take about 70% of your classes in the Department of Industrial Engineering. So you would have, I
Oh,
think in first year, I can't remember the exact number, but I think I had about 7 or 8 modules from engineering. and I had
Mm.
3 or 2 from forestry side. So it's when you get to your 4th year, 3rd year, where you now start moving more and more towards forestry and wood science.
Forestry.
So it's almost like, I think the course was misnamed. If you ask me, they could have just called it wood engineering because, yeah,
With engineering. Yeah.
that's what I would call it, but that's not what it's called. It's forestry and wood science.
Yeah, because it was basically the combination of those two
Mm.
departments, the engineering and the wood side. Um, okay, cool. So then, I mean, after your undergrad, your BSc
Mhm.
in wood science, did you work before continuing with your education? Before
Yes.
going, okay.
So after I completed my undergrad, I worked at a sawmill called UCL in KZN. The place was called, I think it was called New Hanover.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a wood technology graduate program type of a thing. So I worked there for
Mm-hmm.
3 months, and then after the 3 months, I felt like, yeah, it's not what I wanted to do. I moved to Mpumalanga, where I
Mm.
worked for a company called York Timbers. And then there I worked in a research department, which was more in line with what I studied, so to say, because our course is not necessarily a production course. You don't really learn much about production, so to say. So it's not
Mm.
like they don't teach you how to do things necessarily, they teach you how to basically, how do I put this? So while other people are taught how to run, perhaps let's say a dry mill. Okay, we cut logs, we go there, we go there. What we were taught is, why are we doing that? How can we make it better? So I feel
Mm.
like the degree itself is more of a research type of a thing rather than a teaching you how to do your job, if that makes sense.
So it's not technical, it's more
Pretty
research
much,
based
100%. You put it better than I would have put it. So it's more research than technical stuff.
technical stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean you are in like the field that you are in, it's a field that is most people don't know about it. And I mean I'm sure every time you mention what you studied, every person will ask you, what is that? It's not.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get that a lot. And sometimes I try to explain, but I feel like I still don't do it justice because there's just so much to cover when I have to explain it, but I end up not getting to the whole thing. So I don't know. So in a nutshell, this degree, there's 2 portions. There's forestry, right? And
Mm,
forestry is basically, there in a nutshell, what you learn is basically, I would say, the art and the science of basically growing trees in a nutshell, right? But we deal
mm,
with plantation forests as opposed to someone who would be studying, let's say, nature conservation, or is it ecology? I think it's ecology and nature conservations. They would study more about your natural forest, how to, I don't know, conserve obviously natural vegetation and all that. While with forestry, you sort of deal with commercial plantation, if I could call it that. So it's basically the trees that we plant specifically for production purposes of whatever product we want to produce out of them, in a nutshell.
mm.
So that's from lumber to plywood to, I think Sepi does lignin, not lignin, what do you call it? Cellulose mostly, that goes into your, a lot of things like your car dashboards and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they deal more with that. And then I think Mondi deals more with your paper, like blank paper. But they probably do more than that. Obviously, I'm just naming the ones that I know of. And then
Yeah.
your normal sawmills will obviously just do lumber, like the stuff that goes into your roofing trusses, your
Oh,
doors, your furniture, everywhere you see wood, basically, I would say. And then there's also plywood, which I think as well is a structural product, so to say.
Mm.
So the most common one is structural product, basically. So it has nothing to do with firewood, just to clear that out. No way is anyone cutting firewood. So firewood has nothing to do with it. It's wood science, but yeah, we don't deal with firewood, so to say.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so the way that you have explained it, you're mostly dealing with um from the point where you're starting to plant your trees
Yes.
um to the point where you are now producing a specific product like paper, like things that we use for roofing, or the wood that we can use for furniture. So these are all the things that you learn in wood science.
In forestry and wood science, I think you can't necessarily separate the two because you can't say it's forestry and then it's wood science. It's almost like they interlink. So I think where forestry ends is you have the nursery, so that's where they develop the seedlings. I mean, that's where forestry start, where they
Mm,
develop the seedlings, so to say. So you perfect your seedling so that it's your seeds. Basically, you have the best parent material, which is what you're going to put on the ground. And then what you put on the ground, there's a whole silviculture that goes with all that. So for example, how do you plant your trees? How, like, the space between your trees matters, the soil
mhm,
where you plant your trees matters, the climate matters. So the environment in general where you plant your trees, it matters, and it matters what type of a tree you plant where. Can it survive there? Does it have the genetic markers to survive there? So that's a whole thing on its own on the nursery side of things. And on
mm,
the forestry side of things, obviously, once the trees start growing, you have to take care of the trees, where you have to prune them and thin them. So I know this is now, I'm probably going deep into forestry.
yeah,
So
please go deep.
by thinning, basically what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to explain with that is, you plant 1,000 trees. When you plant 1,000 trees, they start competing for resources. That's your water, your nutrients in the soil. And then some of those trees, maybe they might be crooked, they are not straight. Some of them, they
Mm,
have damage. So either way, you're not going to harvest those trees to do anything with them at the end of the day. So you take out all those trees that actually are not, I'll just use the word perfect, that are not
mm,
perfect, and leave your good trees on the ground. So those, you give them more chances, so then they have more resources because they're not competing with all those funny crooked trees and damaged trees and all that. So that's what we call the thinning. So you have to have a dedicated silviculture forester to actually carry out all that. And then there's
mm,
a process as well called pruning. So that process is basically removing the branches from your trees as they grow. Because if you leave your branches, then your trees grows like on the side, they just have big branches, but you don't want that. You want them to go up.
mm,
And when you remove branches, you basically trying to, how can I explain this in the simplest way possible? Try to get clear wood. So clear wood is your wood that doesn't have knots and all that. But if you leave your branches in the tree, then
mm,
when you cut, obviously, where the branch was, you'd get a very big knot if the branch was a big branch. But if you sort of cut those branches while the tree is growing up, you sort of eliminate all
mm,
that, then you get this nice log eventually when you harvest your tree. So up to until that point, up until when they actually harvest those trees, that's forestry there. That's, I would say, how I would explain it. That's where
yeah.
the forestry sort of ends until your basically logs hit the sawmill or whatever type of mill, plywood plant or whatever it is that you do, or your chipping mill, but whatever type of mill your logs ends up in. Then from there onwards, I would say the way I understand it is where wood science sort of starts there, because wood science speak to the product you get, the quality thereof of the products you get, how to
Mm,
basically process those logs to the best of their abilities. I mean, logs or fiber in forestry is a scarce resources in general. I mean, it's not
mm,
available in abundance, especially in our country. So you need to obviously get the best out of your lumber, out of your logs. And then that's where the concept of volume recovery and value recovery comes in. And so it's that interlink. So forestry and wood science. Forestry is from the forest up until somewhere there. And then from there, that's
Yeah.
where wood science start. And then it goes into the wood products and all that. So I think the confusion is, okay, I'm explaining the forest and the wood science, but where does the engineering fit in?
Yes,
Because I did all this engineering, but
that
where
was
does
my
it
next
fit in?
question. That was my next question.
So where engineering fits in with that is it's a supply chain, right? If you look at it, and supply chain, it's the concept we learned from the industrial engineering classes, your quality management and your was it operation management? Yeah, I forgot those modules long time ago. But it's basically a supply chain, right? From where something start until it ends. It's the concept of lean gets in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's where it gets in. It's a manufacturing thing at the end of the day, and it has to be as lean as possible. And then when you produce your product, eventually at the end of all that chain, and then there's cutting in the sawmill, you get your product. Obviously, you must as well now understand the concept of demand and supply. What you're producing, is it what the market wants? It all leads to that. So I would say that's
Mm.
where the engineering part sort of gets in. And also the concept of optimization, all the processes needs to be optimized at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
So yeah, sure, we have this nice tree, we cut it into these nice logs, but obviously there's a process now where we have to actually cut this log into the desired product. That process must be as perfect as it can get, really, and the machinery must speak to the thing, to the product, obviously. Just to explain, for example,
Mm.
plywood, I know it's not a very common product. So when you produce plywood, basically, you take into account that a log is not always perfectly cylinder. So you can literally tell the person who actually designed that the
Mm-hmm.
pillar they used to peel the log. There's two types of pillars, but I won't go too much into all those because it's too technical. But you need someone who understand wood, but someone who also understand processing, which is where I feel like they had to balance engineering and forestry and wood science at the same time to have this one course. Because if you
Yeah.
have someone who have the concept of just designing a machine that takes this thing that is perfectly cylinder and peel it and produce a product, that's not realistic, because you'll never find a piece of log that is perfectly round that has the pith in the middle. So someone had to actually have those brains of saying, no, like, that's not how it works. Logs are not always perfectly round. The pith is not always at the center. So that's where the processing part comes in, and then the engineering part also comes in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's a whole thing. It's a whole
Mm.
degree on its own.
It's
Yeah,
very
I like it
interesting.
because yes, it's not just one thing. It's everything. There's transportation in there, because if you do harvesting, which is one of the modules we do in forestry, I don't think I did that one though in details. I just did a piece of it. But the people who
Mm-hmm.
did forestry, full blown forestry, they covered that very well. So you learn a bit about transportation in there, because in forestry, where you have a problem with transportation is you harvest in plantations, which is a plantation. You're not going to get a tar road. Obviously, the roads are gravel road. And in a rainy season, that's a whole thing.
Mm.
So that's where the forest planning comes in. How do you plan for different seasons? How do you have like your log depots to say, I harvest and I put it here in a situation where it rains and my trucks can't access the plantation? Then I will take from the depot. So it's a whole
Logistics.
thing. Now, basically, now you know logistics. It's forest logistics, but logistics is logistics at the end of the day,
Yes,
right?
that's
So
true.
you learn that element as well. And then there's
True.
an element of chemistry that goes into what SAPI is doing, or SAPI, I don't know how they pronounce it. They are more on the chemistry side of forestry, so to say,
Forestry.
because their thing is pulping. When you pulp for paper, it's a whole thing that involves chemicals and bleaching, and yeah, it's not just one thing, you
Yeah.
you get to a point where I wouldn't say they make you a master of any specific thing, but you sort of like become jack of all trades, because you can have a conversation in a room basically with
Mm.
people from different fields. If you have agronomist, you can have a conversation with agronomist. If you find people who did nature conservation, you can have a
Yeah.
conversation with them, because it's sort of this portion of that in forestry. And if you have people who did
Mm.
supply chain, you can speak to them. If you have people who did logistics, industrial engineering, it's so
Yeah.
broad.
So it becomes easy for you because now during your entire, I mean, degree, you learned a little bit of supply chain, a little bit of industrial engineering, a little bit of the chemistry side. So it's more like you're at the center. You know almost like a little bit of what this one knows, what this one knows. Um, yeah.
Pretty much, I would say.
Yeah. And just to go back to the industrial engineering part, if I did understand you correctly, you mostly use it in terms of optimizing the whole process. Am I correct?
Not only that, but that was the biggest, and that paired with data analytics, because you can't optimize anything if you actually can't extract data and understand the data. So I would say that paired with the data part of industrial engineering, which obviously data includes you understanding the, should I say, softwares, if I could call them that. I mean, you have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to use RStudio or your Excel, maybe even Excel VBA or Python or all those. So you need to be able
Mm-hmm.
to sort of like play with data to understand what's even happening before you can even optimize anything really, or before you can even tell if this thing is not or it is performing. You need that.
Yeah.
So that's where the engineering comes in there, I would say. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's the part of engineering that I've used in my line of work where I've worked. I'm not entirely sure if other people experience it differently, because I know people
Mm-hmm.
who ended up in my one classmate ended up in like an, should I say, architecture type of working environment where they basically design different types of beams, if I could call it that, for
Mm-hmm.
different type of projects. So that's an architecture type of a thing. So in that type of
Yeah.
setting, I'm guessing someone would use more of your engineering drawings type of skills that you learned. So but yeah, it
Yes.
just depends on the line of work you end up in. And one of my classmates ended up as a business analyst, so we yeah, we
Oh,
spread all over really. But the
yeah.
thing is,
Yeah.
most of us ended up in a whole different profession that we ever thought we would end up. So it's, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like you guys are all over now.
Pretty much, we're all over. We're doing everything. But yeah, to answer your question, for me, I've only been using it for that use, because that's
Mm,
only the jobs that I've done where I could apply the industrial engineering
knowledge.
portion of my course. Yes.
Yeah. And you also did data analysis at UCT.
Yes, but that wasn't a full blown qualification. It was a certificate, basically. I think it was over a period of 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I did that is because, like I said, I worked in a research department in Bumalang. So the whole day, you're either doing one or the other. It's either you're collecting data or you're analyzing the data. That's research in a nutshell. There's no in
Yeah.
between. If you're not collecting the data, you're analyzing the data. So that's when I felt like I needed to sharpen my data skills so that I can better visualize the data I collected and actually sort of gain proper insight out of it. I mean, obviously, I understood the basics of your Excel, obviously, and your R Studio, but you need to go a bit beyond that to actually, be able to get anything of value out of your data. It's one thing to understand the basics, but it's a totally different thing to actually go deep into this data
It
thing to be
too.
able to do anything with the data you collect.
Yeah. So my question would be, what is the extra skill that you learned from that short course that you did not learn from your full degree at Stellenbosch?
I think it was more of a refresher, if I could be honest. I think when you are undergrad, you just want to pass. I'm going to be honest on this one. As
No,
much
that's
as
true.
I did
That is
all those
true.
C++, Studio, Excel VBA. Yeah, I don't know what else
Did
I
you
did
do
there in
Python?
under. No, I didn't do Python undergrad. I did not do that one. Then I think I learned Jupyter notebooks in undergrad, but that was just out of curiosity. It wasn't part of any course at that point.
So yeah.
But yeah, so when I did the data certificate with UCT, it was more of a refresher course, so to say. It wasn't like you're starting a whole new thing. Like I already knew the concept of, okay, if they say this, this is what they want done. But it's like now you're no longer under the pressure of, yeah, that exam was tough. I just need a 50% pass. That type of vibe. So now it's more
Yeah.
like you actually want to do this. You actually want to learn this thing and you applying it in a real life situation.
Mm.
So I would say that's the thing that was different between undergrad while I was doing my degree and the data course. And in the data course, there was an element of SQL in there, which I never did SQL. It was my first time learning SQL. So I learned a new thing there. I learned a new tool, even though I've actually never gotten the chance to use it. I can't wait for
Yeah.
the day where I actually use that. Hopefully, I don't forget. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say the thing that was different is at that point when I was doing the data course, I had the opportunity of applying it like at that point in time, like
Oh,
in the work that I was doing. That's the difference between the undergrad and
and
the
the
data course. Yes,
yeah. And I think what you just said is definitely true. I mean, when we are in undergrad, we just studying to pass, honestly. And it's very rare where you'll be thinking about what you're studying and how you're gonna use it in future, especially at your workplace. But immediately when you get to your workplace, now you're starting to think, oh, this is why I was studying this thing. Maybe I also need to just do some quick recap on that to remind myself. And yeah, I think it helps sometimes to do these short courses.
it does. Even though
Yeah.
they are pricey, but it does help. It does help.
Yeah, they
uh,
do help. And now that you're busy with your postgrad in industrial engineering, um,
mhm.
I mean, you just finished your master's, now you're going to a postgrad. What
Funny
made you do
story.
that?
Funny story with that. Last year I was doing my final year in my master's, but I was doing my first year in the postgrad in the industrial engineering course. So in 1 year, I was working. I was doing my final year of my master's degree, and I
Yeah,
was doing my first year
of
in
your
the postgrad in
postgrad.
industry. Yes, all in the same year, and I still had to have a life somehow. So that was. I wish I could tell you how I survived. I have no idea. That's the honest truth. I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
did to ask you
I
how.
don't
How did you do it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I don't feel bad for taking a break this year because I was like, nah, man, I did good. I deserve this break. I
You
deserve this
you
1 year
do.
break. Yeah, because it was something else.
No, you definitely deserve the break. And what is it that you're hoping to gain from your postgrad, the one that you're busy with?
Look, there's two things, right?
Mm.
And I'm gonna be straight. Like I'm gonna be straight with you on this one. The one portion is at the end of the day, we're doing these qualifications because we're gonna go and look for a job. That's fact. right?
That's
And
true.
the names matters. The names of the courses you did matters. What's written on your CV matters. As you stated that, like the course that I did, my base qualification, forestry and wood science, a lot of people have no idea what that is. Like
Mm-mm.
as much as I'm technically already qualified to do a job as an industrial engineer, I feel like you will never be recognized in that capacity, even though you pretty much have everything. The only thing you don't have is the final year project of saying you're doing a scripts. You don't
Yes,
have that element of it, but you went all the way. So you're basically
yes.
qualified as this thing, but you don't have that tag to your name that says yes, you are an industrial engineer. So that's, I'm gonna be honest and say that's the one other reason why I decided to go all the way. I mean, I already did all this heavy lifting undergrad. I might as well get a name attached to it. But
Yeah.
the second part of it was I understand as well that there's a couple of things that I missed in the industrial engineering course, because even though I went like 70, 80% there, there's that 20, 30 that I missed. And I
Mm.
felt like this postgrad bridges the gap that I missed in industrial engineering. So that's partly why, which will obviously enable me to, I mean, to do this optimization stuff a bit better. And the module also selection in that postgrad, they are very good. I mean, you do introduction to software development. You do,
Mm.
I
So
forgot
you're
what
doing
it's.
coding also?
I love coding, even though undergrad it used to trap me. But I've realized once you do something because you want to do it, not because you have to, not because it's just there in your face and they shoved it down your throat. Now it's like, I actually want to learn. Now it
Yeah,
becomes easier. You're like, huh,
that's true.
this makes sense. This makes sense. And it's amazing how everything is code in life and we don't even realize. Just the
Yeah,
funniest thing. Once you start, I mean, that's what I've realized from the introduction to software development course. It's everything is coding. You just don't know it's coding, but literally everything is coding.
that's true.
Ones and zeros, literally.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Other than that, I can't find any super smart reasons to say why I did it. I did it, one, because the tag to your name matters. That yes, you are qualified
You
at
are
this,
an industrial,
and
yeah.
the other one is just to bridge the gap of what did I miss, because I didn't take all the modules in industrial engineering. So what did I miss, just to bridge the gap. Then alternatively, what I could have done was, because some of my classmates did this, after you complete your undergrad in forestry and wood science, so you just take, I think it's an additional year or a year and 6 months, I'm not entirely
Mm-hmm.
sure, and then you basically graduate in 5 6 years. You graduate with 2 degrees in a nutshell. So you get your
Oh,
forestry and wood science degree, and you get
and
your BEng
industrial.
degree. Yes,
Ah,
I could have
that's
done that, but Stellenbosch is not 50 rand to study there, so I couldn't do that.
But it's so cool that they allow you to actually do that.
But then the reverse is also true. So if you did industrial engineering and you also want to get a degree in forestry and wood science, it's the exact same thing. You just take that additional year and a half or 2 years. I'm not entirely sure how long it is, but some between a year and 2 years, you do that and you also
Then you're
graduate with
in.
your, pretty much you can get, that's the easiest way to, yeah, as I was saying, so the easiest way to get 2 degrees in 6 years, study industrial engineering in Stellenbosch, and then after do a wood science degree, or do a wood science degree, and then after get an industrial engineering degree.
Yeah, and then you have 2 degrees in your life. Easy
Yeah,
like that.
I wish I could say it's easy, but yeah, you did engineering, so you know.
Not
Yeah,
easy at all.
that's
Um,
something.
yeah, man. What's since your field is very conserved, I mean, we don't really know a lot about it. What is something that we usually misunderstand? Like the misconception that you normally get?
I'm gonna model it after my own experience, after how I got to a point where I even started forestry. I studied forestry and food science. When I was in high school, honestly, I don't even want to lie. I had no idea that it even exists as a field. That's the honest truth. I think partly because where I was staying, there was no forest, well, plantation forest. There was no plantation forest in my part of the world. I mean, there is if you go to the side of Zanin, but then at that time I've never even been to Zanin, so you can imagine you grow up in a place and the forestry just it doesn't exist in your brain as a
Mm,
field, so to say. And is I mean, yeah, sure, you see products like your roofing trusses, they are being used on the daily, but there's not enough to make you inquisitive about it to say, wait, but where does this come
wait,
from?
yeah,
And TV, for example, we watch TV pretty much, I don't know how many hours in a day. At that age, probably like a good 3 to 4 hours every day is you sitting in front of the TV. And mostly what you see, like, is someone is a nurse, someone is a doctor, someone is a, all these common careers, so to say. Someone is a policeman, someone is a soldier. So those are constantly in our faces. That is why it's so easy for us to gravitate towards that, because
yes,
those are the things that you see on the daily. And there's people around in the village who is a soldier, is a
yes,
nurse, is a
and
doctor.
they're doing
They are
well.
there. They're doing well. They're like, wow, teachers have big houses. Wow, nurses have nice cars. So it's like they're constantly like in your face, all these different type of careers. So that's why it's so easy for you to gravitate towards that. And I
Yeah,
mean, every TV show you're gonna watch, you're probably gonna see a doctor or an engineer, or hear about an accountant or something like that,
lawyer. Mm,
or a lawyer. So it's always these type of things that makes us gravitate more towards these other careers, because they are in our faces. We see that. But in my entire life growing up, I don't think I've ever watched TV and I saw anything forestry related. I can't
mm-mm.
think of any moment where I've seen that. I've never. I mean, I don't know if you have, but I have
No,
not. And I've never even questioned like all this packaging. I mean, it's there in our faces, but not enough for
we
us to
don't
question.
question
But
them.
I mean, everything you buy at a shop, almost everything, is either in a plastic or a paper bag.
Mm-hmm.
Literally,
Yes,
literally. I mean, from your tea bags, they come in that road boys thingy. Your cement come in like a cement bag. Your, uh, I don't know, like your paper
Uber
towels,
Eats,
like
food.
cut box, like all that, like everything, literally come in some sort of. It's a plastic or it's paper,
Yes.
like books and all that. But it's I don't know. Somehow it's not enough, or at that point for me, let me speak for myself, it wasn't enough for me to even question, but nah, man, where does this come from? You get, I think that's why this course is not a very common one, because it's not in your face. But I feel like for people who
Mm.
grew up in these forestry areas, for example, there's a friend of mine from KZN. He started agronomy actually, and then he bridged from agronomy into wood science, and I think now he's a silviculture forester or something like that. For him, he grew up in a setting where like there was forest plantation all over, and
Mm.
people in the village, this one they work in that plantation, that one is a supervisor in that forest, this one is like, he grew up in that environment. For
And
him, that's a
then,
career that was always clicking in his head. So
yes,
like the
yes.
whole thing of trees and all that, he knew that that's a possible career. So I don't know, in a nutshell, to answer your question, I think we don't know about it and we don't gravitate towards it because it's not in our face. That's why we don't know about it.
Mm.
So how I found out about it is a former teacher of mine, his son was, when I was in matric, his son was doing first year in Stellenbosch, studying forestry and wood
Oh,
science. And his son was using a DAF bursary, Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries bursary. So that's how I came to know about it. And at that point, I was, well, good in the subject agricultural science. So
Um,
I think in my year, I was actually the top scorer in my, was it a second or a district?
yo,
I can't remember. I don't want to lie, but one between the two.
yeah, that's a very great achievement.
Yeah, so I think from there he saw that, man, this guy is like, this agriculture stuff is his thing. So
Yes,
then he explained it to me like, no, man, there's this, and then you can get a bursary. Because I mean, let's be realistic. Most of us don't come from a background where they can actually afford to take you to school. You either get NSFAS or you get a job. Like those
that's
are
true.
almost your two options. Like, are you getting a job with your matric certificate, or are you getting
Uh,
NSFAS? It's almost,
yes.
that's the fight after matric. So for me, I was privileged enough to have a teacher. His name was Menier Mukwate. Very nice guy, very chilled. I was
Mm.
privileged enough to have him actually explain to me and say, nah, man, there's this thing. If you actually apply for it, there's bursaries for it. Apply for this bursary, you'll get it. Your marks are good. And at that point, I had already applied for mechanical engineering in UJ
Yes.
and like all this other stuff and all that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. I applied I didn't know what it was. I'm going to be honest. I applied for
Yes.
forestry and wood science in Stellenbosch. But the nice thing that I liked about it, which is why I didn't resist it too much, is when I actually like Googled it and stuff, I saw all this engineering that I was like, okay, now I'm confused.
Mm.
Forestry
Engineering.
engineer, and I wanted to do engineering. So like when I see all this engineering that, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not straying too far from what I wanted to do initially. So okay, cool. I'll do that.
Let's go with
Went
it.
ahead, applied, got accepted, applied for the bursary 6 days before the open week in Stellenbosch. I think the open week was on, what was that? I think the classes were starting on the 1st of Feb. Open week
Mhm.
started on the 21st of Jan. Something along those lines. I think the open week was from the 21st of Jan up until the
Mhm.
1st of Feb, or the first week of Feb, something like that. Like about 6 days before they, not the open week, orientation week, correction. Before
Orientation,
the
yes.
orientation week could start, I got now an email from DAF. After the email, they followed up
Oh,
with a call. Okay, followed up
no
with a call.
way.
And they're like, yeah, so we want to give you this bursary, blah, blah, blah. I was so
Yeah.
excited. And they sent me a mail. And then at that time, I was in a squatter camp called Scraping or Itireleng, or whichever the name you know it by. So it's a squatter camp just next to Lodium in Pretoria.
Mm.
I was staying there at that point. And then I
Yeah.
walked from that squatter camp to Lodium because there were internet cafes at that time. People with laptops were very limited. I went there,
Mm.
printed the forms that say I accept and all that, and then I sent them back. Now I have the letter. Awesome, great. Have admission from Stellenbosch. I have a bursary letter from DAF that says, yeah, you can go to Stellenbosch and register. Awesome. So now you have to do all these logistics of obviously getting money, booking
Yeah.
bus, and all of that. So, okay, cool. I got my ducks in a row, try to get resources wherever I could get resources. Awesome. I bought a bus ticket from, what's that place? Bosman. Bosman in
Bosman, yes, in
Pretoria.
Pretoria, yes.
Yes. Yes, to Cape Town. That was the bus ticket. Intercape. First time going anywhere further, like from Pretoria. The furthest stuff went was Limpopo, Pitur, Limpopo, Pitur.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to
You're
Cape Town
going
and by
far.
myself, and I've never been there. And honestly, I don't even know what this Cape Town looks like. And I don't know where I'm going. Remember, at that point, I don't have
Yeah.
rest. I didn't even pay that money to reserve the rest. Like it's, well, I didn't know at that time that you had to do all this like things of reserving and paying a certain amount. All I knew is I'm admitted, I have the bursary letter, I'm going. That's all I
Yeah.
knew. I remember after booking the bus, I was left with something like, I think it was about 350, somewhere
Yeah.
there. That's all I had to my name. And I had a bag that had my clothes in it, and I had a backpack with a file. In the file was just, your normal ID copies, that bursary letter, basically the things you'd have in a file and your IDs and all of that. That's all I had in my backpack, and I had my bag with my clothes. That's pretty much it, and my 300 and something rent.
And
got
you
into a
came.
bus. Yeah, I wanted to go to Cape Town because all I knew was I was going to Cape Town. I didn't even know where was Stellenbosch, where was what. All I knew is I'm going to Cape Town. Got into a bus. I sat next to this other guy. His name was Lutando. He was coming from Moria at that time, so he could speak Pedi. He
Oh,
wasn't necessarily Pedi, but he could speak Pedi.
yes.
So second to the guy, I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to Stellenbosch, blah blah blah," and then I'm gonna get off in Cape Town. He's like, "But why are you getting off in Cape Town? You're
Yeah,
going to
if you go
Stellenbosch." I'm
to
like,
Stellenbosch.
"I have no idea where I'm going, bro." I was like, "No, chill, chill. I got you. No worries.
Oh,
Cool." Okay, we went. The bus took forever. Hey,
yeah.
that drive was long. Hey, that drive was long. I was just like,
Almost
"Ay,
24
man."
hours.
Hi, now it's day, now it's night again. It's about to be day again. What's happening here? What's happening here? Okay, cool. When we got to Belleville, the guy is like, you see, here is the closest. You get off here, you get a
Mm,
taxi, then you go to Stellenbosch. Just go there. I'm like,
yes.
"Ish, okay, not a problem." I get off, I take my bag. Now I have to figure out how to go from Belleville to Stellenbosch.
Oh.
There's always this, it wasn't Uber at that time. I'm not sure if Uber was there in 2016, but those taxi guys that
Taxis,
just
they
park
stay
there
there.
and
Yes,
they
yes.
ask you, where are you going, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sharp. One of the guys approached me. I'm like, "Ah, bruh, me, I'm going to Stellenbosch University and I don't even know which direction is that." The guy was like, "I know, I'll take you. How much you have?" I'm like, see now, this is a problem. This is a problem. I can't remember the exact figure of how much that guy charged me, but it was probably along the lines of 250 somewhere there. Remember, I had 350 to my name. Well, somewhere there, but it was 300 and whatever after buying the ticket. That's how much I had. And then now this guy want 250 to take me to Stellenbosch. But at that time, the only thing I'm thinking is Stellenbosch is the land of milk and honey. I'm going there. My
Yes.
chair is reserved there. I'm going. I don't care about anything. I just want to be in Stellenbosch. I took the guy's deal. I was like, cool. Probably at that time, that was a lot of money. Hey, in
It
2016, that guy
was.
probably robbed me. He robbed me,
Yeah,
that
it
guy.
was a lot of money that
He
time.
robbed me. But okay, not a problem. The guy takes me to Stellenbosch, drops me right in front of admin A. Stellenbosch there in admin A where we sort bazaars and everything. I get there. It's me and my bag and my backpack. That's all I have.
Mm.
And then I go there, there's those ask me people with the yellow t-shirts. And then I'm like, yeah, here's my story. They're like, oh, okay, no, man. The place where you register is there. They pointed the nails here at the top there
Yes.
because you have to go in there. And then there's computers. You just go and register yourself. My friend, hey, ngakrakeka. Is that how you say it? I've not, because I was Zulu. But yeah, Yashuv. When I got there, I see a laptop. They're like, yeah, no, sit here, register. Hey, banna.
You've never used
Hey,
one before.
I've never used this thing. I don't know where the on button is. What do you mean?
Oh,
What do you mean register? I've never seen this thing. Register what? Where? How? Okay. Cool. The guy saw that Shem Umjita
mm.
Zumshubel Kutaf. So he basically walked me through the whole thing and then he was like, okay, let me see what courses, blah blah blah.
Yes.
And then he basically registered for me and then he printed the registration, proof of registration, and then I took that to the bursary office because apparently that's where I had to take it. Okay, cool. Went to the bursary office. When I went there, at that time there was still Lynette Williams. I think she's still there. I'm not sure if she's still there. But when I was doing my
Yeah.
master's, she was still. It was Lynette Williams at the time dealing with all that stuff. So I go there, stand on the queue, very long queue, by the way, in January, February.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
that queue is
long.
long. Right? It's long. But I didn't care because at that time I have arrived. I'm in the land of milk and honey. I have arrived. I don't know, like, I don't care about anything else. I'm at peace. I'm in Stellenbosch. I made it safe and sound in one piece.
Yes.
Nothing is gonna demotivate me. But that's when now you start having this. I'm gonna be honest on this one. That's when you start
Yeah.
having that imposter syndrome. Now you're like, yeah, no, I
I
don't
don't
think I've
belong here.
I don't belong because everyone looks so calm, looks like they've got this. Everyone
Oh,
is like, plus the English is Englishy.
yes.
When people are speaking, you're like, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And this one is with the mom and the dad. This one, like, You
They're both
see,
there,
yeah, you see a
and you're
whole
all
world that you've
alone.
never seen before, and you're there with your bag, and no one has a bag here. You're the only one who has a bag. People are just like, why does this guy has a bag in the bursary
Yeah.
office? It's like it's a weird thing, but yeah, you just compose yourself, and I'm there until it's my turn now to go in. I go in. I give Lynette Williams the bursary letter and the proof of registration, and then she does the things on the system. She's like, hmm, okay, nice. At that point, I also had that merit bursary, and I think I
Right.
had three bursaries plus the one I had, or
Yes.
maybe it was more than that. I don't remember. But the other ones were those small bursaries. You know, those small bursaries in Stellenbosch, maybe to cover
Yes.
15K. But you have to choose which one you want. And if you choose one, the others fall away. So it was that
Mm.
type of a situation. So the one I had was the best because it offered everything. It covered your fees, your accommodation, your meals. Like it was basically a full house bursary. So I was like, no, it's fine. I'll take this one. Okay. She did the things. So now it gets to a point where she's like, oh, so what rest are you allocated to?
Oh,
I'm like, ma'am, what are you saying? It's like, rest. Like, because they sent you an email and then you reserve the space. I'm like, email, reserve the space. I don't know what you're talking about. Now she start getting shocked. She's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, me, all I know is I'm here in Stellenbosch. That one of our accommodation rest, that is on you. Me, I don't know anything. La la. Now it started being tense now because I'm
yeah.
here, sharp. I have the bursary, but I don't have the accommodation, and there's nothing she can do.
Definitely
So,
nothing.
so that day, I remember her sister is a teacher. I'm not sure if she's teaching in Stellenbosch or where, but the sister has a house into this field, and they had like a
Oh.
two-bedroom type of sharing thingy in their yard. I don't know if they were renting it to students at the time. So she was
Mm.
just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with you because I don't know what dress I'm gonna give you. I don't even work with those things. So best I can do is arrange for you to have a place to sleep
Oh.
today because I don't know what I'm gonna do with you, my guy. I was like,
That was so
cool,
great of
awesome.
her.
It was, bruh, she was God sent. You have no idea.
Yo.
Oh, cool. Yaba kanjalo. I went to Lynette's sister's place. I slept there. They were nice enough to actually cook for me. Oh, going back to the cooking part. Remember,
Hey.
I had 300 and something, and then the Uber shuttle guy chowed some of it. And then I will never forget, I bought rice at Quick Spa at the Nelsie. I don't know, it was rice and whatever it
Very
is they put there, the
expensive.
one where they weigh, they weigh for you. And then when it came back, it was like 1 million, bro. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So that pretty much chowed the rest of my money. Whatever was
Hey.
remaining after paying the Uber, gone. Yeah. So what's gonna happen here? But even though I was scared, all I knew is I was in Stellenbosch. That's all I knew. I'm in Stellenbosch. I don't care about
And
anything
that's all
else.
that
Okay,
mattered.
that's all that matters. And then fast forward, yes, in the evening, Leonard's sister came back from work. She picked me and my bag, which is
Mm-hmm.
all I had, like I said. And then we went to Leonard's sister's place. They cooked, they dished for me
Oh.
nicely, kate, without problems. And then obviously they gave me blankets and all that because where was I going to get blankets?
Yeah.
So I ate their food. I slept in their place and I used their blanket. And then the following
Yeah.
morning, I showered with warm water. So it's
Yeah.
basically, it was just, I don't know, it was just God doing the things.
Yeah. God was
I can't
definitely there
explain
with
more
you.
than that. I can't explain honestly. Yeah, it was just crazy. So okay, fast forward to tomorrow in the morning. She goes to work. She drives with me in her car, drops me at Stellenbosch to do whatever because it's orientation week. You have to do whatever the
Mm.
other people are doing, right? Cool. But at that point, I started getting a bit stressed because now I don't have accommodation and what am I gonna eat? Like now it's starting to get to me a bit now at that point. It's my second day, but it was starting to hit like ngathi la, it's gonna shoot. So shoot, la. So
Mm.
okay, no problem. I went to campus and there's those ask me people who helped me the first day to go to the admin and the place where you register. They saw that diamond. This gang had two lost, and then one of them approached me. actually, I still remember the guy's face, but I forgot his name. It's a long time ago. So I was like, hey, what's happening, my guy? Not to, yeah. I was like, should be, it's bad. So I don't have accommodation, and this is my story. And the guy was like, are you a first year? Like, yeah, okay. Do you have a bursary? Yes. Like, no, follow me. And then we went into the admin building. So where they were dealing
Yeah.
with accommodation, after you pass that counter there, and then you turn right there. And then I waited on the passage thingy, and then he went inside, and I don't know how they spoke. I wish I could tell
Yeah.
you what they said to each other. And then when he came out, he was like, no, it's cool. It's sorted.
Oh.
You go into that break. So what had happened was, in Dachbrek, there was a guy who reserved the space, but he took an offer at a different university. So he didn't come to
Um.
Stellenbosch. So that space was now open. So I just sort of went there at the right time.
Yeah.
And then I
And
got that space. Which is weird because I'm assuming there was people on the waiting list who wanted to get in and all that.
a
So yeah, but I
lot.
mean, God is God at the end of the day. So guy can do whatever he wants, really. So that's how I got accommodation. Okay, cool. My second day, I got accommodation, and then they introduced me to the rest guys who were taking care of first years. And the guys were like, okay, cool. We can go with you, take your stuff. Where do you stay currently? And all that. And then there I see there's someone else on this side. I mean, he has his stuff in order here, my first year roommate. And then this is me. This is my cupboard. Okay, cool. Take my bag, throw it in the wardrobe, cupboard, whatever you want to call it, because yeah, I didn't even bother hanging anything. I don't have hangers, and there's nothing to hang.
It's definitely nothing.
So that's pretty much what happened. And then now I have a room, obviously, and meals are sorted. From that point, meals are
Yeah.
sorted because the student card, you just go when they go eat at the
Then you
cafeteria
go
place,
with
you just
them.
swipe your student card. So the deal was with the rest is you swipe, it's fine. When your
Mm.
bursary finally kicks in, they will just take from your bursary. So
Yes.
that's pretty much how it worked with meals. That's how my meal issue got sorted out. But then
That's
now
good.
I still had this issue where it's evening. Evening is coming. It's after supper. We have to sleep. And U Brothers
Oh.
doesn't have blankets. I laugh about
Yeah.
it when I think about it. Now I had this big jacket, big gray jacket. I had bought it at what's that shop? Dance. It's a dance.
It
Duns dance. Yeah.
is. I
Very
remember
big,
that
nice
one.
gray. It was my best jacket. The best jacket I own. Very big, very warm. That jacket was my blanket for 2 weeks. Two full
Yo,
weeks. 2 full weeks. Every day I was sleeping like cover
with
myself with that
it.
jacket. No pillow, no nothing. So I would wait until my roommate is sleeping so that I can sleep in peace without anyone
Oh
asking me a question.
no.
If he's not sleeping, I'm not sleeping because that would be weird. Like, why are you curled
Yeah.
up there on a mattress under a jacket? That would be
Yeah.
weird. So yeah, 2 weeks passed. Fast forward. So what happened was each section address was assigned a mentor. So our mentor
Mm.
was the guy, Evan. So every time we'd have this meeting, Evan would be like, I don't understand. There's never blankets on this
On your
bed. What's happening?
bed.
Does this guy wake up and remove all his blankets? Or there's no, like, where does he
Oh.
sleep? Does he stay here? What's happening? I don't know what happens. One time, maybe he came into our room and I was sleeping. I don't know, obviously, if I was
Oh.
sleeping, I won't. And then after 2 weeks, one time, he even comes with a bed cover, like, fitted sheet thingy,
Um,
and a blanket and a pillow. That was my first set of
yo.
bed in university, literally. Like,
Eh,
bruh, I can't tell you how, like, have you ever been grateful? Like,
yeah.
you don't understand how grateful I was for that. Like, it's crazy. It's
And
crazy.
he
But
did
that's
that without asking questions.
without asking no questions. He doesn't want to know your life story. He doesn't care. You
Mm-mm.
don't have a bedding. I'm giving you a bedding. Whatever your story is, like if I wanted to share, I would have shared on my own. But he didn't like try to. Have you ever when someone gives you something, but it's like you have to somehow give this sad story before it. That never
Mm.
happened. It was just like,
Yeah.
this guy don't have a bedding, I'm giving him a bedding, and that's pretty much it. The rest, it's pretty much history, I guess.
Yeah.
Other than that, I wouldn't say there was, other than cost chowing after that. After that, then it was cost chowing. Before then, it was all those logistics of adjusting and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, it's
It
things
was
just
just you
started
dealing with
falling
the
in.
cost.
And that's basically my long story short. Wow, I talk a
Yeah.
lot.
Yo, I see now we're running out of time again, and I'm like, yeah, I still have a lot of questions to ask you. Um, yeah, now I think I'll just have to select the ones that I think I'd like to hear your opinion on. I think the first one would be, where do you see the whole forestry department, the wood science business heading, I mean, in the future, in the next 10 years, where do you see it?
That's a tricky one to answer. Um, well, it's both tricky and not tricky, really. I mean, on the wood product side, I mean, that is something that was, it will always continue. I mean, the quarry crafts will always have wooden desks, wooden chairs, wooden tables, wooden shelves, wooden whatever. So that will always be something that is in demand. Um, except we're having challenges in a sense of, if you go to countries like, I think, the United States and Canada and all those countries, their forestry industry is a bit different because, obviously this is just from the top of my head and what I've seen. Probably like 80 to 90% of their buildings are built from wood. So
Wood,
wood is what they
yes.
build with, literally. Like if you look at an American person building a house, it's pretty much wood, the whole
Wood,
house, and they
yes.
just put whatever they put on the outside. But at the core of it, there's wood. But in
Mm,
South Africa, you don't see that happening a lot. I'm not entirely sure if it's because wood is still a new product, or there's a stigma against wood, or concrete is just cheaper than wood, or whatever the reason may be. I didn't really
mm,
delve much into that. But yeah, it's going to struggle in the sense of, we don't use wood as much as the other countries. But in terms
mm.
of wood products, especially with the movement of trying to go away from pollution and all that, I mean, we have paper straws now.
Yeah, which is
And
good.
our plastics now, when you buy from the shops, or not plastic, but whatever, carry bags or whatever you want to
Carry
call it,
bags.
we're trying to move from, or there was a movement at some point. I'm not sure if it's still there. We're trying to move away from paper because that stuff ends up in the ocean and all that, and move more towards paper bags. I mean, I think the Food Lovers does that.
Mm,
You rarely, I've never seen a plastic bag in Food Lovers. It's paper bags mostly. So they're trying to be more environmentally friendly. Um, on the other side, there's this thing of carbon footprint, trying to preserve the planet for the next generation and so forth. So I think forestry is one of those industries that are sort of contributing to helping the planet in a way, so to say, because
mm,
while other industries put these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we actually sort of do the opposite. So
yeah.
while in other developed countries like Denmark, which is, this is gonna sound funny, I met a
Mm,
guy from Denmark when I was in my undergrad. He was actually shocked about our politics, how our political parties campaign. They campaign on like job creation, and these people were previously disadvantaged, you're not this color, you're that. Most of it goes back to that. If you actually, like, in a
yes.
nutshell, it goes to that. But for them, it's a totally different thing. It's a thing of which party has the best environmental thingy, cares more for the environment,
Mm,
or the best strategy to combat climate change and all that.
mm,
So going back to your question, going into the future, if things continue the way they're continuing, where we keep killing the earth, forestry will be more and more important because
Mm.
we are dealing with a product that is firstly is sustainable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we take from the earth, we put back on the ground. Unlike whatever it is that we mine, that stuff it's we take from the earth, but we have no way of putting it back into the ground. How do we do that? We mine it, and that's about it. But with
Mm.
forestry, is whatever we take from the ground, we put back. And there's also the thing of carbon sequestrations and all that. So there might be in the near future a rule in the country that actually says, I hope there will be, that would be nice. The rule that says a certain percentage of your building must be made from wood for the reasons that
Yeah.
obviously that are stated, like you're reducing your carbon footprint and all that, and basically being environmentally friendly in a nutshell, if I
Yes.
could just say that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's not a dying industry. It's going to be a very important industry in the future. At the
Mm.
moment, I would say it's still a bit,
Still
yeah, it's struggling a
growing.
bit. I would say, but it's an old industry, so I won't say it's new because it has always been there. It's just that I don't think
Mm.
it has gotten the recognition
That
it,
it
it
deserves.
deserves, so to say. But I think we should give it the recognition it deserves because I mean, it's not a bad industry. If
Mm.
anything, there's more benefits of investing in forestry and all that, especially from the government's perspective and supporting the forestry industry. But then again, I understand that in a country like ours, as much as we can say everything, we have history in this country. So
Yeah.
the history of this country is not an easy thing. It's everything you almost have to go back towards that history in a way because if you say the government must support forestry, then somebody is going to say, yeah, but who owns this forestry? Who owns this land? And now this land
Mm.
claims over some of the forest plantations. My grandmother used to stay here. Is it justified? Probably, we don't know. Maybe that guy's grandfather used to stay there. Maybe that was his
Yeah.
grandfather's farm. It's look, I don't have all the answers, but the answer I can give in a nutshell is in the near future is going to be a very important industry because in the
Yeah.
near future, caring more about the environment is going to be a very important
Mm.
discussion. It's going to be more important than
It
equality
is
of
now.
races or equality of everything because I believe we are going to bridge the gap eventually in terms of our history as a country. Is it going to be
Mm.
easy? I don't know. Is it going to take I don't know, 10 years. I don't know, might be way more than that. I mean, it's definitely going to be way more than that before we address the injustices and all that. But after all that is said and done, I believe one day we'll be at a point where what is at stake is the world as we know it. And then that's when your industries like forestry are going to start playing a part, I think.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
definitely true. Hey, I've never thought of it in that way, but now I'm starting to think about it that
Yeah.
in the near future we would run to that industry. Um, yeah.
There's things, even though I studied forestry, I don't understand in details because you hear of people talking about your carbon taxes and all that, where I don't know if it's happening or something that's going to happen eventually, where companies are actually going to be taxed for the amount of carbon they release into the atmosphere. So
Mm.
you almost have to be carbon neutral as an industry, so to say. So if you're releasing this amount of whatever gases into the atmosphere, you have to pay tax for that, or else you must be carbon neutral, meaning the amount of carbon that you, not just carbon, I guess, but I think it's just carbon. I don't want to give false information on that, but the amount of, let's just call it carbon because that's the most common one. The amount of carbon you
Yeah.
put into the atmosphere, you must also retain some of that carbon somewhere, where which is where this whole concept of carbon sequestration comes in, of how the wood can keep carbon in it and all that, and then you end up being carbon neutral. So I don't know if it's a theory or it's a reality yet, where industries like that releases so much carbon will end up paying maybe industries like your forestry industries. So we release this, but you guys are, well, carbon neutral in a sense of you having plantations and all this, and then this plus this, then it becomes carbon neutral. I'm not sure of how the whole concept of being carbon neutral works and carbon taxes.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna keep this one short. I think it's getting late.
Mhm.
Um, Regarding like innovation and AI, do you think that your field is like ready for that? Are you guys what's the word, adjusting to the innovation, or are you guys seeing AI as a threat, or how are you guys adjusting in your field regarding that?
I think there's more and more of that being introduced into forestry. I mean, I know AI is you can interpret AI in a lot of things, but
Yeah.
if we're referring to moving more and more towards using some things like drones to do some task in forestry, that's already being done, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and where at the moment we use manual labor, we rely on people to measure like logs and whatever. There's people developing apps to literally, it's like a camera thing where you just sort of take a, for the lack of better word, a picture of a stack of logs. So if you input and say all these logs are 7 meters long, and then that app sort of takes that length and then calculates the circumference or the diameter or whichever they want to use, and sort of estimate the volume of what volume of log is there in terms of cubic meters or whatever measurements that you use. So is it a threat? I don't think so. I
Mm.
think they're trying to automate a lot of things, actually. I mean, even
Yeah.
from harvesting, most operation used to be manual chainsaw, a guy felling trees, but now they are moving more towards mechanized harvesters. And I mean, that's just the beginning. I think going further, they will probably start
Mm.
implementing more and more of that. Is it a threat to people's jobs? That's a good question. I don't know. I
Yes.
don't know. But we know if you sort of like use machines to replace manual labor to a certain degree, it's a threat to people's jobs. But is it really? Because I mean, people are the ones who have to develop those machinery and manage those machinery. So it's not necessarily you just switching, you creating a certain type
Adjusting.
of jobs by taking away certain type of jobs.
Oh,
I think that's
yeah.
just my personal opinion. I think.
Mm. But I think also what I got from you is that the whole industry is kind of adjusting to the innovations that are being made, which is good. Because I think at the end of the day, we just want things are not going to be the same. So we
Mm,
just need to learn how to adjust fast so that we can also keep track, with time. Um, yeah, and so that we don't lose value in what we are doing. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna ask wrap-up questions now. I still had a lot of questions.
I'm sorry. You should stop
But
me when I talk a lot because yeah, for
yeah,
someone who's introverted, I can talk a lot.
nice. Ah, man. But I think you shared a lot. Most of the things I was not aware of, most people were not aware of. Um, but then my question would then be, let's say, for example, there's someone who is graduating now with the forestry degree, the wood science one, and they kind of feel like they are boxed in, right? When you're just graduating, you don't really know what's out there. You get my
Mm,
point. So then what advice would you give that kind of a person? And also another person, let's say there's like a high school student who's also interested in what you are doing, what would then be your advice?
This is always a tough one for me. It's always a tough one. I'm gonna be honest. It sounds like it should be an easy one, but it's not an easy one because if I can only model it after my own personal experience, and if I look at my own personal experience, it's almost impossible to advise
Mm,
anyone. But okay, anyway, to go to your question one, someone who feels boxed in when having this qualification, I think for that particular person who already graduated with this qualification, they should be aware of the power they have in their hands, and they should
mm,
not be, just looking at one thing. You have to be a forester, or you have to be actually just a forester, or work in a sawmill, or become a foreman in a production line of cutting logs. I don't think they should only look at it like that, because the qualification we have is so broad. It shouldn't You shouldn't be limited to what you think you should be limited to, right? I mean, you can
yeah,
use everything that you have learned. For example, there's a big element of coding in the course. I mean, you could literally go into data analytics and then eventually build on that and become I don't know, a data scientist, a data engineer, or go into software development. The degree allows you to do that. You can also go into this certification bodies like your
yeah,
SATAs and your whatever, like, which actually give people their certificates of, in a nutshell, I would say, doing good. You can look into that as well. In a nutshell, to answer that part of the question is, don't feel
mm,
like you're boxed in, because there's a wide variety of things that you could do. But you'd have to make peace with starting small, because it's not an industry where you're gonna graduate and become a doctor and you earning big bucks. Unfortunately, that's the
yeah,
harsh reality of the course. That's not how it works. You have
mm,
to put in the work and identify where you wanna go, and then once you get that gap of doing that, no matter how small, and build from that. But you're not boxed in. You can pretty much do everything with the qualification.
yeah,
For a high school student who is just finishing matric, depends. For a high school student who has the resources to actually go to university, I would say just follow your dream. Do what you want to
mm,
do what you love. If forestry is something that excites you, go for it. It's a good cause. I mean, why not?
yeah,
But the same advice is not the advice I would give to someone who doesn't actually have resources at their disposal, because for them it's a thing of, for the lack of better word, this is going to sound harsh, everything that
mm,
comes into your net is almost a fish.
yeah,
So you must be aware of your stepping stones when you see them, because there is nice stepping stones that you can step on, and then they can enable you to do whatever you want to do in the future. Because
true.
for those type of people, your first degree might not always be what you've wanted to do, and that's the reality. I know it's what I'm saying is probably very controversial. People would actually say, yeah, but why aren't you telling people to follow their passion? What I'm saying is, if you can follow your passion, by all means follow your passion. But if
Mm,
you can't, use the closest stepping stone you can find until you reach where you're going,
yeah, that's powerful, eh?
which is what I've done. So I think for people who are not very fortunate, that's the best route for them, is do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. But for those who can do what they want to do at that point, then by any means follow your heart.
Mm,
Because if you don't have resources at your disposal, you end up falling into that trap of saying, I couldn't achieve this because I don't have the resources. But
mm,
resources is not necessarily money for you to go study medicine because you wanted to be a medical doctor. Unfortunately, that's not how resources works. Resources is using what's there at that
At
point
that
in time. That's
moment.
resources. If resources is you working in a construction site and then take yourself to school part-time at UNISA or whichever institution allows you to do that, so
Mm,
be it. So
that's
be it.
true.
Because I've went to school with in university, like a lot of people, I kid you not, most of people who I'm still in contact with, I would go as far as to say to a certain degree they made it in life, but
Mm,
the guys are not doing anything remotely related to what we're doing in varsity. It
yes.
almost tells you that for starters, yes, if you don't have the resources, by any means push and do what you can do with the resources that
Mm,
are available at that point in time. And then once you have the freedom, which is the financial freedom to actually do what you can do or what you want to do, then
do
by
it.
all means you do that. So I guess I'm very against, and again, this is probably going to
Mm,
sound very controversial. I'm very against advising people to follow their passion because it can be a very dangerous statement to make because
mm.
it is the difference between someone doing what they have to do at that moment in time and someone just relaxing and saying I couldn't do this because
It's not my passion.
like there's a lot of reasons why we didn't do a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons we didn't do a lot of things. It's like I say, initially for me, even though I wanted to go full-blown engineering, that's what I wanted to do, and not even industrial engineering. I wanted to do mechanical engineering.
Mm,
Before then I wanted to be a mechanic, which is funny, believe it or not. I wanted to be a mechanic. I just wanted to work on cars. I didn't care how I get there. I just wanted to see myself in a workshop stripping the engine into a million pieces, putting it back together.
mm.
But you have to do what
What
you
do you
can
have to
do in
do?
that point in time with the resource you have, and eventually if you work hard enough it will allow you to actually do what you want to do.
Yes, that's very true. Um, yeah. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
I
your
know that was
time.
such a, that was such a deviation from the answer, the
Yeah,
traditional answer to the question. I know. I know, I'm
but
sorry, I know.
look, that is very true, and it also got me thinking. Like what I have in my mind now is that once we're done with this call, I'm literally gonna write that what you just said and process it again. Um, and I think it's the advice that most people actually need to hear. Um, I believe there are a lot of people out there who missed opportunities just because in the back of the mind they're like, no, this is not my passion. But they're not looking at what is presented to them as something that they can use as like a stepping stone. So we should not be like we should look at other things that could lead us to our goals. So yeah, thank you for that.
Pretty
It
much.
was yeah, it was a very nice session, and I believe that people who didn't know anything about your field now they have depth or kind of an idea of what is what is it all about, and what is it that you are also doing on. I mean, when you're going to work and like the whole field what it entails. And yeah, I mean, just want to say thank you for your time and for your availability. And yeah, I mean, if people would like to ask questions, I'll ask them to comment. Maybe I'll also send you the questions. You can also answer if you feel free to. But overall, I think your time is something that I appreciated.
Mm.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Thank you for having me and sharing a bit about this career that no one, well, not no one, but a lot of people ever get a chance to hear about. And I'm glad I could clarify that it's not firewood. That's the one that I always get. So I'm glad that people know it's not firewood. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a great journey for me. I can't complain. And now I'm funny thing is I started in the forest, but now I'm in the business side of things. So I'm not even in the forest or in the sawmill anymore. I'm in basically sales and marketing. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
running a distribution center here in Blackheath, Cape Town. So it's
Oh,
all the products that come from the sawmills are basically, that's where it reaches, and it reaches the end user, basically your guys who are doing whatever sofas, beds, pallets, e- everyone who uses wood. So I'm the point now between the sawmills, which is the guy that cut the logs, and the guy who's actually going to use the product. So I'm happy to say I've reached full circle. I've started from the beginning where it starts and where it ends. So
yeah.
I'm happy.
And you know something that is very interesting. You just you reach the full cycle in a short period of time. That is,
Yes,
yeah,
that is so true. I'm sorry,
yeah,
I'm not gonna play and be modest and say anything. You're right on that one.
yeah,
It was quick. It was quick. It was quick. It was,
yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, I'm both lucky, but okay, I'm lucky and blessed. But I'm also going to give a bit of credit to myself for the hard
Mm.
work that I've actually put through to actually get this far. Because it wasn't all luck. It Yes, luck, yes, blessings, yes, but a lot of
Yes,
hard work.
blessings and hard work. Yes.
You see, you put it much better than me. Blessings and hard work.
Yes. Oh
Correct.
man, thank you so much.
Thank you
Uh,
for having me, Cindy.